with Satan being cast out, once again, it's time to sing. All right? And so there's another voice proclaiming. Again, it's not clear whose voice this is. Right? It just says a loud voice. Most likely not God or Christ, given the content of what's there. So it's perhaps the 24 elders, the angels, both. But there's a loud voice. That now have come. Now have come what? The salvation. Now, when we first hear, now have come the salvation, we might think of our salvation from sins. And so we're thinking of ideas like deliverance or rescue. But we could also think of it in the term of victory, right? Especially keeping with the military images that we've just been seeing, right? That this is a victory. Now has come to salvation, the victory. And the power. Where does true power come from? And Satan has some power, but the true power, does it come from Satan? Does it come from Rome? Does it come from culture? No, it comes from God. The salvation, the power, and the kingdom of our God, kind of the full manifestation and the authority of His anointed one, His Messiah. And the fullness of God's victory is now apparent. The kingdom is inaugurated. The Messiah's authority has become clear. All in Satan being cast out. Why have they come? Well, because the accuser of our comrades, the accuser of our brothers, might have a variety of things there, but that idea of the family nature of the church, the accuser of believers. So the reason for the rejoicing, the reason for the arrival of salvation, power, kingdom, and authority is the accuser, the Satan, has been thrown down. Right? Satan's job, so to speak, is to accuse people before God. Right? He accuses them day and night before our God. Well, not anymore. And so, with that we have the ideas of the paraclete, right? The advocate, the comforter, Jesus serving as paraclete in 1 John. So although there's this kind of prosecuting attorney nature to Satan's job, Jesus stands as defense attorney for the people. Not only was the accuser thrown down, but he was conquered. He tried to accuse our brothers, but they conquered him. They overcame. They were victorious. The appeal that is made in those in chapters 2 and 3, right, to the one who overcomes. Well, they overcame. How did they overcome? By the blood of the Lamb, by the word of His testimony. Notice that the success is because of Christ and the power of the message, not the people themselves. Right? They conquered by the blood. They conquered by the word. This is what brings them success. But what also is a part of this is they did not cling to life even in the face of death. The conquering occurred because of the lack of fear they had in death. They didn't cling to life, but welcomed the opportunity to provide the testimony. Somebody turn to Mark chapter 8 and read verse 35, please.
For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it.
All right, so we're seeing here kind of a reflection of that passage. That here are these people who have not held on to their lives, were willing to lose their lives for the word of the testimony. And so, here is a call to rejoice, to praise, to glorify. Who is to rejoice, though? Well, it says, "Rejoice, you heavens, and those who dwell in them. But woe to the earth and to the sea, for the devil has come down to you with great wrath, because he knows his time is short." So there's a couple ways to take this. Some would say that what we have here is a distinction between believers, those who dwell in the heavens, and unbelievers, those who dwell in the earth and the sea. But how would this be a woe, a great calamity, that the devil is cast down to the unbelievers? We would have to assume that what's being suggested here is that now that Satan's cast out, he turns on his followers, so to speak, brings persecution or his wrath upon his followers. Maybe that might be part of it. I think it's more likely it's contrasting the saints in heaven, right? The people that had, back in chapter 6, asked for vengeance. And so the accuser's been cast out of heaven. You don't have to worry about him anymore. But you people on the earth, right, the saints, the Christians on the earth, woe to you, right? Great calamity is coming to you because Satan is coming down with great wrath. Because his time is short. With the inauguration of God's kingdom, the final victory is only a matter of time. Satan now does not have unlimited time. His time is short. Even if, when you think about the whole of human history, even should, time continue for another 1,000, 2,000 years, Satan's time is limited. The end is coming. The final victory is moving closer to him. And so there's great wrath because he's not been able to stop the ascension, the coronation of the male child. He's not been able to stop Jesus being born. He is mad and looking for somebody else to take it on. And so he takes it out on, first, the woman again. So he turns back to his attention to the woman. Now here I think we're wrapping back into verse 6 now. So the time is kind of being played with here as well. In response, the woman is given 2 wings of the great eagle. What's the idea about giving this woman 2 wings like the eagle? What's that meant to symbolize? I mean, she gets them so that she can fly away. Okay, yeah, use the wings to fly away. But what's being symbolized by giving her wings like an eagle?
Salvation.
Yeah, salvation or deliverance, right? That God's giving her 2 wings so that she can escape from the dragon. And so we could look at Exodus chapter 19 and verse 4, Deuteronomy chapter 32 verses 10 and 11, to look at passages that talk about God delivering his people like an eagle. But one that probably is familiar to most of us, if not all of us, is Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 31. Those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. And so this idea of God providing his people with wings like eagles. So that's where Tolkien got it from. The eagles always coming in to save the day in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. So this idea of eagles as deliverers. And of course, kind of the eagle with his wings in comparison to the dragon, right? Eagle and serpent. She flees to her place, which is kind of where we're getting back now into verse 6, where she is nourished for a time, times, and half time. This is the only place where John uses that phrase. But here again, it's at 3.5 years. So it's another way to say 3.5 years. Specifically, though, this language comes from the book of Daniel, and we've talked about that as well. So Daniel chapter 12 and verse 7 would be one place. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 25. Right? So this time, 1 year, times 2 years, half time, half a year. So 3.5 years. Which is, of course, the equivalent to the 1260 days, which is back in verse 6.
Is there any significance to just giving her wings, making her look more angelic, or not?
Well, one of the things that, we kind of think like that, but there aren't too many angels in the Bible described with wings. There's I think it's in Zechariah, there's one description of women with wings that sound like angelic beings, but other than that, especially since he says eagle's wings instead of, but maybe there is something to that as well. The cherubim and the seraphim have wings, so there might be something, because God certainly delivered us through angels as well. Now the dragon changes tactics. Suddenly, and I didn't really notice this until I was just looking at my notes, preparing to talk about what I'm getting ready to talk about. He suddenly changed from dragon to talking about serpent. Right? Verse 13. So when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle so that she could fly from the serpent into the wilderness to her place where she's nourished for a time, and half a time. Then from his mouth the serpent poured forth water. Right? So he made the connection, right? He says dragon means devil, and the devil is the old serpent. But now suddenly he stopped using dragon and started talking about serpent. But his tactic now is to try and drown the woman. So he pours from his mouth water like a river after the woman to sweep her away with the flood. How big is this dragon, and where did he get all this water from? Right? This is again very strange. But thinking this, of course, is symbolizing something. What is this satanic flood that's coming? What's being represented here? Well, certainly he's looking to destroy the woman, but since it's coming out of his mouth, maybe the idea is a flood of lies, a flood of deception, right? Because he's the deceiver of the entire world. Maybe it's a flood of persecution, which will come out in chapter 13. Right? And so the water is probably symbolizing something like that, but he's trying to use something to destroy the woman. If it wasn't strange enough with this huge flood of river water coming out of the serpent's mouth, the earth now gets involved in it. And it opens its mouth. Okay, the earth has a mouth in Revelation, opens its mouth and swallows the river. So what's going on here? Is it meant to call to mind the drowning of the Egyptians? Right? Here's they're crossing the Red Sea. The Egyptians come after, and so the water kind of drowns the Egyptians. God using nature to stop the oppression of God's people. Maybe it's something like the earth engulfing Korah and Dathan, who had rebelled against Moses during the Exodus, right? And so the earth kind of opens up under these two rebellious individuals. but even nature itself coming to the aid of the woman. I don't know where we can go with that and what that's telling us too much, because it's just so strange, right? It just seems so out of place. But, God protecting this woman. And so the dragon gets even angrier. I mean, think about all the frustration Satan has experienced in this chapter. He cannot kill Jesus. He cannot stop Jesus from taking his throne. He has been cast out of heaven. He is unable to destroy the woman. And so his fury is even greater. And so he goes off to make war with the woman's children. So this is why I think we probably should maybe understand the woman as kind of an ideal, like the faithful community, because her children properly represent individual churches or maybe even individual Christians. And so Satan is unable to go after or to defeat all of these different situations, and so finally he takes it out on individual Christians, those who keep the commandments of God and who hold the testimony of Jesus. The way that he will go off to make war with the woman's children is through the use of two beasts that will come up in chapter 13. And so after our break next week for the Faulkner lectures, we'll come back to chapter 13. So it's even longer now before you can find out what 666 refers to. All right? So you have to wait an additional week, and Lord willing, we'll get to it the Tuesday after lectureship.
Would you say that, are we seeing things to come and things that already have passed?
I think that we're definitely seeing some things that have passed. And I think that a lot of what we're seeing are things that have passed. But I also think that we can see from other passages later on in Revelation that Satan is almost, I don't mean to sound, I don't want to kind of demean Satan or make light of it, but he's almost like a one-trick pony. He's got one thing he does, which is deception. And he's always going to use that to try and stop God's purposes. And yes, certainly he's going to take casualties, and he's going to take captives, as he said. But in general, it's not going to work. God's going to consistently stop him. And so, while I think that a lot of the events that are behind these symbols have taken place in the past, I think it does show us a pattern that we can say, yeah, and that he continues to be angry because he continues to be defeated. So I think the specific events are past, but we do have some principles here to think about Satan. And like I said before, we shouldn't take him. We shouldn't give him too much credit, but we also don't want to not give him enough credit. So we want to make sure we don't need to fear him because of what Christ has done, but we also need to recognize that he does still wield a lot of power.
Because he can live in alcohol, you can't do in the bar and witness.
Yeah, that's the thing, and a lot of alcoholics recognize those kind of things, right? The ones that are dry for several years, they realize what they've been delivered from, and so they don't. I can't do that, right? I can't be around the smell of it. Whereas others might be able to go in and do those kind of things. A lot of them, and so you're kind of watching out because there is that flood of lies and deception that's out there. Any other questions or comments? All right, so we'll pick up after the next week in the fall.